Speaking of like having good for too much good or for too long and not being able to appreciate, good things, I can think of somebody, a team or a fan base. I'm a fellow Bama fan. I think are you a Bama fan? I can't remember.
I am.
But I can think, everybody's like, oh my goodness, we got two losses, in the world. It's like there are a lot of teams that would kill to have just two losses or by the end, still one more game to play, but still, or three lost either way. But there's a lot of teams that would kill to have that. And just think about the amount of sustained success that a two-loss season is like the end of the world. Like that's crazy. Anyways, sorry, that was just a little plug in there.
Yeah, that's actually a really good thing to bring up because, like, even, being an Alabama fan myself, we are used to the idea of, winning and, like never sometimes going seasons without losing. Sometimes we lose is barely, and then we still end up making it in the championship game or playoffs. So we're almost
Yeah,
used to the idea of just having, ever since Nick Saban came in, we've had this like big dynasty going on. And now that we lost a couple of games, people are starting thinking like, oh, dynasty's over now.
yeah,
Looks like Georgia is going to be like leading the way now, and that's kind of where it could even go into this idea of like being
yeah,
rich because we're just so spoiled with the idea of like, oh, win, 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 and if we lose,
yeah,
then we're like, oh no, this is it, like we're done, like we're no good
yeah,
anymore.
yeah. The problem is when you start to think that you're entitled to the win, and like, and none of the fans are on the field playing, so like what we think and say really doesn't make a hoot. But it's the mentality of the players that are there. If they think that any win is a given, then they're going to get their butts kicked. I hate to deviate from the topic, but like this season's crazy. Like if you think we beat Texas by 1 point, right? And we lost, and we beat there was another team we barely beat, A&M by like 3 points, and they were at the goal line. And so like we're 4 points away from being, a four-loss team, and then we're 4 or 5 points away from being a four-loss team. And then if you swing the other way, Tennessee by a field goal, LSU by 1 point, we're 4 points from being undefeated. So like that's just how crazy college football is. But
Yeah, it's definitely been a crazy season for sure. And I think it definitely even just like you were talking about the whole idea of like our mentality and like feeling like the entitlement of thinking like, oh, like we're gonna win this one, and we start to overlook a team, and that's where it ends up bringing us down. So even going back to the idea of like being rich, you could even put that into the equation as well. Like we
yeah,
start thinking that we expect these big things to happen to us if we became physically rich, and then it becomes like we feel like we're entitled to have everything, anything and everything, which, yeah, money can definitely take you a long way, but at the end of the day, it can backfire on you too, and it could be a dangerous game because if you start kind of bragging about your riches and your money out there, then people are going to notice, and people are going to be thinking, hey, where does he live? Where, like, what gated community does he live in? What car does he drive? I can run up
yeah,
on him while he's coming out from the store or a restaurant or something like that. So it could definitely be pretty risky. And then just on top of that, just kind of
yeah.
losing your inner self altogether.
So there's a story in the Bible, right, about some son who went ahead and got his inheritance and went out into the world and splurged it and had a good time and ended up he ended up destitute again, but came back and the father was like, oh, let's go and slay the fattest pig or cow or whatever and eat it. And to me it's like you go out in the world and you have a really good time, but like at the end of the day you came back to family, like you were saying earlier, family and the relationships you build. That's all that
Yeah.
really makes you take away.
Yeah, that's actually a really good story to bring up because that is definitely in the Bible about the prodigal son, how, yeah, he went off and, like you were saying, he took all of his inheritance with him and then ended up like regretting it, and then came back, and then his
Yeah,
father was there like, oh, he's back, let's celebrate. And that just all comes back to the idea of being spiritually rich, is having that unconditional love there.
yeah,
And money can't buy love, money can't buy peace and joy. It all comes from
yeah,
the heart and mind. So that's something a
yeah,
good important thing to bring up.
yeah. one one thing I always struggle with is like, when you think about relationships with people and like friendships and romantic relationships or whatever, it's like, are you really loving that person for them, or are you loving them for what they do for you? And then are you loving them, for how they make you feel? You feel good about yourself, you get validation from them, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, do you really love them for them as themselves and as their person? Or do you love them? Or are you loving what they do for you? And so you're really loving yourself by proxy through them. So that's kind of a struggle, not a struggle, but like it's like a different frame of thinking in terms of relationships. But anyways, sorry guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually another good thing that you're bringing up is, that idea of because it can be a challenge that there can be people that come into your life, especially if you just so happen to be making a little bit more money and people start to try to draw closer to you, people that have never spoken to you in their life, and they start trying to, hang around with you more, and then you start to question people like, are you really friends with me because you really want to get to know me, because you didn't want to get to know me back when I was in school, but now you want to get to know
Yeah,
me
yeah,
now that I'm making money and doing well, which right now, people, if you're just now joining this, I'm not making loads of money, so don't be trying to be my friend. So I'm still working full time, still living with my parents, so people don't get the idea that you can just reach out to me thinking that I'm making good money if you just so happen to just to jump in the middle of this episode. So
by the way, Joel, can I borrow a couple of these? I'm just kidding.
yeah, I know, right?
Oh man.
Yeah, so it does start, you start having this idea of not knowing who to trust, because even family members that, there are some family members I don't really talk to as much as others. And if they start all of a sudden, hey, like, you want to go grab some lunch? I'm gonna be thinking like, you have him
I'm
on one.
paying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
let me second guess. I'm gonna
And,
start
and
second guessing.
and then like you never want to loan money to family because it's a gift really, because loaning money to people can destroy a friendship or a relationship, because what they say, I think the Bible says it, is that the borrower is slave to the lender or something like that, and it can really stress that relationship. But yeah, sorry.
No, yeah, you're good. That's definitely yeah, definitely important to remember. It's just because that's where the whole idea of paranoia comes in again. And it's sad that
Yeah,
it gets to where sometimes you can't even trust your own family and friends. So so yeah, money is definitely it's definitely, from what I've heard, the root of all evil. It's
yeah.
and I can see
No,
why.
no, no, no.
Uh,
The love of money is the root of all evil.
there
Right?
you go. Yeah, yes. Thank you for that correction, because yeah, that is yeah, because money is not bad. It's just yeah, it's what you do with the money and just having that love for money. If you love it more than, if you put that above everything else, then yeah, it's
Yeah, yeah,
definitely wrong for sure.
yeah.
So so yeah, my last question that I actually have is, not everybody, everybody likes to think, if they had to choose between being physically rich and spiritually rich, they go to the idea of being physically rich because they think of the immediate, I guess, things that come with it, as far as, making good money, like getting a lot of money, getting nice cars and houses. But why do you think we should maybe be more focused on being spiritually rich rather than being physically rich?
Because being spiritually rich is like the pathway to true happiness. The physically rich can help you buy things or experiences and all that kind of stuff that can maybe substitute you for that temporary feeling. But having true spiritual richness, I think that's pathway to true happiness, because you know you can't take your money with you. You know what I mean? You can't take your house with you, your car with you. None of that. And nobody on their deathbed. It's a common saying. Nobody on their deathbed wishes they would have spent more time at the office. You know, so like goes to me. It goes back to relationships with people, and giving and doing for others, and out of love, not out of love for them, not out of love for self. Uh, and I mean, it's hard to really calibrate yourself to that, because you wouldn't. there's a certain, I guess you could say there really is a certain level of, physical richness that you need to be able to sustain just to sustain your life, just to be able to enable yourself to do the spiritual richness. I guess you can look at it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs type thing, but uh, it gets to a point where, you know, I guess it's like diminishing returns. There's only so much physical richness that can really get you further along in happiness, and eventually, the long lasting happiness that needs to come from spiritual richness.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good way of thinking about that because there is that importance of, that you got to have enough physical richness to be able to provide for your family and for your loved ones, whoever you're living with or whoever lives with you. So that's definitely really important, and to be able to even do things like paying off, bills and stuff like that. So definitely, that's very important to have as far as, being physically rich, but yeah, definitely for those that may make more of their time, invest in more of their time in the office when they could easily be home, like spending time with family, but they're thinking of maybe working overtime just to save up for a big car, a nice car, that, I mean, nothing wrong with that, just as long as it doesn't get over, you don't overdo it, I guess, just
Yeah,
making sure that you find that right balance of, spending time with your loved ones, and
yeah,
also being able to do your job and to provide where help is needed financially.
yeah,
So that's definitely important. And then
yeah,
one other thing that you mentioned that was really good is the idea of like when it comes to physically rich, it's like the whole idea of being temporary. And because at the end of the day, like at the end of our lives, like you were saying, you can't take your house with you, you can't take these materialistic things with you. Whereas spiritually rich is more of a permanent thing, unless somebody comes in and breaks that trust. But for the most part,
yeah,
the whole idea of being spiritually rich, as far as like having happiness and love, it all boils down to our reactions to different situations and just the people that we surround ourselves with, which is definitely permanent as far as our contentment with what we have. So I think that's definitely a really
yeah.
good thing. It's just thinking of the idea of permanent and like just long term and short term kind of idea.
Yep, yep, yep. The hmm, had another little example, but I can't remember. Oh yeah, I got guys that maybe not the job that I'm currently at, but at previous jobs, and they would work like 14, 15, 16 hours a day, and get there at like 4 or 5 in the morning and leave at like 7 or 8 at night, whatever. And there's just like they're beating their head against the wall. And like I gotta, you talk to them and they're like, man, it's never done, it's never over. There's always more work, and I'm like, yeah, that there always will be. Like you're never gonna get finished. There's always gonna be more work to do. Like what are you talking about? If you ever got it finished and there was no more work to do, they'd fire you. Like what are you talking about? And and it's like quit trying to do everything. Do what you can, get to a point where you're at peace with how much you've done, and then go home. Spend time with your family, dude. Like, I don't know, but that's just one way how it can kind of play out in the real world of people being anxious about their job and all this and all that. But I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly. So that is true because, at the end of the day, you may feel like you accomplished everything, to the best of your abilities, but then the next day, here comes more work. Here comes out the
Yeah,
big load of tasks to, things to do. And especially here in the holidays, I know that's going to be affecting me a lot more with
yeah,
my job. I'll definitely will be a lot more busy. And especially since I have like co-workers that may be off during the holidays because I used up all
yeah.
of my holidays. Oh, not all of holidays. I've used up all of my vacation days already. So I am definitely
Yeah.
going to be stuck throughout most of December outside of the day after Christmas. So I will definitely be pretty busy. So just the idea of just knowing that there's always going to be work that needs to be fulfilled, or else, like you said,
Mm,
we're going to be without a job if we don't have things to do. And
Yeah,
so and they
yeah,
also like the idea there's always going to be bills to pay, there's always going to
yeah,
be different, things that if you got to financially provide for,
yeah,
like even with housing, there's like the idea of the mortgage and the
yeah,
car payments, there's a lot that goes into that equation. So just
yeah,
understanding that like we have to just remember there's got to be a stopping point when it comes
yes,
to pursuing the idea of getting that paycheck. Like which is definitely important, get that paycheck. But I guess what I
yeah,
mean is getting like working way over time for
yeah,
to feel like you have to provide, like you had to almost like make too much money and like not being able to be with your family. So just
yeah,
finding that balance is super important.
yeah. And it's like we said, nobody ever said they wish they would have spent more time at work when they're on their deathbed. But I mean, yeah,
Yeah, and that's actually a really good like kind of final thought to think of, because like when it comes to like the end of our lives, which nobody ever knows when their end of their life is, like when you start kind of, if you start even currently as we are living, like when you look back on our life or on your life, like do you see yourself like as someone that made time for family, or do you see yourself
yeah,
as someone that is just making their job their spouse, basically, making their
yeah,
job
yeah.
their baby,
Mhm.
basically. And
No,
that's,
no, no.
yeah, definitely not a
Yeah,
healthy route to go down for sure. So just
yeah,
it's important to start to even have that self-reflection of just realizing that maybe I
maybe,
can make some changes. So that's definitely
yeah.
important.
Realizing when too much is too much, and especially like if you're salary rather than hourly, uh, the more you give, the more they'll take. They'll never tell you, oh no, don't. Every once in a while, on a rare occasion, they'll say, hey, you need to get out here. You've been here 16 hours, and that's more of a liability thing rather than a actually caring for you thing. If you ask my opinion, but maybe your direct boss who actually cares about you, but like on up the chain, like they don't. It's just a liability thing. Oh, they six here 17 hours. They had a car wreck on the way home. They could potentially fall back on us. Anyways, but like the basic premise of the more you give, the more they'll take. You beat your head against the wall, and especially with salary because you don't get overtime. For salary exempt or whichever it is, you don't get overtime. You just putting in the extra hours, just try to make headway on your work. Which I mean, not to say don't try to make headway on your work, but be efficient while you're there. But don't dedicate your life to it. You got other stuff you need to do. You're gonna burn out. You're gonna be spiritually exhausted and weak, and you're gonna be, probably I've seen it happen. People will they'll throw themselves into work and stress out so much, and I've done it myself in the past, and then they try to make up for it and get spiritual peace from vices, alcohol and food and other sorts of things, and you can't make it up. I'd rather have peace of mind than trying to chase peace of mind from outside sources, kind of thing. But yeah,
Yeah, that's a really good, thing to, kind of close out with, because it's just important to, to not prioritize your job over your family. And that's, kind of, boils down, but comes back to the idea of the spiritual richness, because that you're never going to be spiritually rich at your job, because you're always going to be thinking, oh, I'll have this to do, I have this to do. And you may have that temporary, like, oh, I feel good, I feel like I'm
yeah,
content with my job, like what I did today. And then you come back and here
yeah,
goes a pile of more things. So
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's just that temporary idea of just being spiritually rich. And definitely, I hope that maybe, whoever's watching this, maybe you will start,
yeah,
kind of thinking about like trying to make that balance right, to where
yeah,
yes, it's important to financially provide for your family, but like is doing all that overtime really worth it? Especially like Max was
yeah,
saying, as far as the salary goes, like
yeah,
regardless, you're making the same amount of money at the end of that month. So, or whatever day that you are getting paid on. So it just
yeah,
goes to show it's, work doing all that overtime and putting too much time where you could wait until the following morning after you spent time with your family that night. It's just things to think about. So, hopefully
Yeah,
maybe somebody got something out of this.
hopefully so. I did. I know I did. Lots of good talk.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like I definitely did as well. So I definitely appreciate you being on this episode with me today.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Thanks, Joe.
Yes, absolutely. And I look forward to having you back on future episodes as well, because I know you signed up for a
Yeah,
few more.
good deal. Heck yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, everybody, I thank you for watching. Or if you're not watching, if you were listening on the podcast streaming platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, I appreciate your support. Whichever way you're doing with that support. So, anyways, everybody, I hope that everybody has a good rest of your day, and I will see y'all on the next episode of Not Your Average Joel. Goodbye.